The Great Hall of Harmony Prime was the largest structure ever built by any species in the galaxy. Its ceiling rose so high that clouds sometimes formed inside it. Thousands of seats circled a central platform where speakers would stand and address the Galactic Council. Today, representatives from over 200 species had gathered for what they believed would be a historic moment. Ambassador Park Yuna stood near the human section. Watching the alien delegates file into their seats, she was a small woman with gray streaks in her black hair, but her eyes were sharp and calm. She had served Earth for 30 years. She had learned one important lesson in that time. The galaxy did not respect humanity. It tolerated them. There was a difference. Humanity had joined the galactic community only 200 years ago. Two species that had traveled between stars for 10,000 years. Humans were babies. Clever babies, perhaps. Dangerous babies, some whispered. But babies nonetheless. High Speaker Torvin of the Velric Dominion took his place on the central platform. He was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and 4 eyes that never seemed to blink. The Velric were one of the oldest species in known space, and they had never let anyone forget it. Fellow members of the council, Torvin began, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. We gather today to discuss a matter of galactic security. The rapid expansion of the human species has become a concern that we can no longer ignore. Park Yuna kept her face blank, but she felt her stomach tighten. She had heard rumors about this meeting. She had hoped they were wrong. In the past century alone, Torvin continued, humanity has colonized 47 worlds. Their population has tripled. Their military fleet has grown to match several mid-tier powers. And their technology advances at a rate that some of our scientists call unnatural.
Oh.
Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Park Yuna noticed that many delegates were nodding in agreement. We do not suggest that humans are evil, Torvin said, spreading his 4-fingered hands in a gesture meant to look reasonable. We simply recognize that they are young. They have not yet learned the wisdom that comes with age. They act on impulse. They fight among themselves. They breed without control. For the safety of all, we must guide them until they mature. Fleet Master Vorn of the Morthok hegemony rose from his seat. He was massive with thick gray scales and teeth like broken glass. The hegemony supports this initiative. Humans are aggressive by nature. Their history proves this. They nearly destroyed their own world with nuclear weapons before they even reached space. Can we trust such a species with unlimited expansion? More voices joined in agreement. The Solari Collective, a hive mind species that communicated through linked consciousness, flashed their support through bioluminescent signals. Smaller nations followed, eager to please the great powers. Park Yuna listened as the containment doctrine was presented in full. Human expansion would be frozen. No new colonies. Their fleet would be reduced by 60%. Certain technologies would be banned. Human movements in galactic space would require permits. Inspectors would be stationed in human systems to ensure compliance. It was not protection. It was a cage. When the speeches ended, High Speaker Torvin looked toward the human section with something like pity in his 4 eyes. We now invite the human representative to respond. Ambassador Park, the floor is yours. Every eye in the chamber turned to her. 2,000 species watched as the small human woman walked slowly to the central platform. Many expected tears. Some expected anger. A few expected her to beg. Park Yuna did none of these things. She reached the platform and stood in silence for a long moment, looking out at the assembled delegates. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but clear. 200 years ago, humanity first made contact with galactic civilization. We were amazed. We were humbled. We thought we had found a family among the stars. She paused. We were wrong. The chamber grew very still. You have called us children. You have called us dangerous. You have decided that we must be controlled for our own good. Park Yuna reached into her coat and pulled out a single sheet of paper. I have been authorized to deliver the following message from the United Earth Federation. She unfolded the paper and read, The United Earth Federation formally declares a state of war against the Velric Dominion, the Morthok hegemony, the Solari Collective, and all signatories of the containment doctrine. For 3 heartbeats, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The words hung in the air like a physical thing. Then chaos erupted. Delegates shouted. Some laughed in disbelief. Fleet Master Vorn roared something about crushing human worlds within a week. High Speaker Torvin's 4 eyes went wide with what might have been shock or amusement. Park Yuna waited until the noise died down. Then she continued reading. Effective immediately, all human citizens, vessels, stations, and assets will withdraw from galactic space. When we return, we will no longer ask for your acceptance. We will no longer seek your approval. We will deal with you on our terms, not yours. She folded the paper and put it back in her coat. You wanted us contained, she said softly. So we will leave. But remember this moment, High Speaker. Remember what you have done today. Because we will. The other human delegates rose and followed her. Nobody tried to stop them. Nobody knew what to say. Admiral Kong Doyan was waiting outside the chamber with a squad of human marines. He was a tall man with a scarred face and eyes that had seen too many battles. When he saw Park Yuna approaching, he saluted. Is it done? He asked. It is done, she replied. Begin the withdrawal. Kong Doyan nodded and activated his communicator. All ships, all stations, all colonies. This is Admiral Kang. Execute protocol silence. I repeat, execute protocol silence. We are going home. Within 12 hours. Every human vessel in galactic space changed course toward Sol. Within 48 hours, human colonies began evacuation procedures. Within 72 hours, the last human ship crossed into home territory. Then something impossible happened. A massive energy barrier appeared around the Sol system, blocking all signals, all sensors, all communication. Human space became a blank spot on every map in the galaxy. And then there was only silence. Back on Harmony Prime, High Speaker Torvin addressed the council with confidence. Let them run, he said. Let them hide in their tiny corner of space. They have shown their true nature today. Cowards who bark loud but flee when faced with real power. The containment doctrine will proceed as planned. Humanity is no longer our concern. The delegates applauded, but Commander Kira, a young Velric military officer watching from the observation gallery, did not clap. She had studied human history. She had read about their wars, their strategies, their terrible patience. And she knew something that Torvin did not. Humans never ran from fights they thought they could win, which meant they had left for a different reason entirely. And that thought kept her awake for many nights to come. 6 months passed. Since humanity vanished behind their barrier of light, at first the galaxy celebrated. High Speaker Torvin gave speeches about the triumph of civilization over barbarism. The containment doctrine was passed with unanimous approval, even though there was nothing left to contain. Medals were given. Promotions were handed out. Everyone agreed that the human problem had solved itself. But slowly, quietly, the celebration began to fade. It started with small things. A Velric merchant vessel traveling near the Outer Rim reported seeing a strange ship on the edge of sensor range. Before they could get a clear reading, it was gone. A Morthok patrol found an abandoned research station drifting in empty space. All crew were missing. No signs of struggle. No explanation. The only thing left behind was a small metallic sphere sitting on the command console. When they examined it, they found a single symbol carved into its surface. The human number 1. Nobody knew what it meant. But everybody felt uneasy. Commander Kira stood before the Velric Military Council, presenting her report. She had spent the past 6 months studying everything the galaxy knew about humanity. Their history. Their psychology. Their way of war. No, we are making a mistake, she said bluntly. We are treating their withdrawal as a surrender. It is not. Admiral Thomas's, the oldest member of the council, made a dismissive sound. They ran away like frightened animals. What else would you call it? Strategic repositioning, Kira replied. Humans have a long history of retreating before major offensives. They call it falling back to regroup. They draw their enemies in, stretch their supply lines, and then strike when the moment is right. Strike with what? Another admiral asked. Their fleet was tiny. Their technology was inferior. Even if they spent a century building up their forces, they could not match the combined might of 3 empires. Perhaps, Kira said. But there is something else that concerns me more. She activated a display showing human military history. Humans invented something called psychological warfare. The goal is not to defeat the enemy's army. The goal is to defeat the enemy's mind, to make them afraid, to make them doubt, to make them destroy themselves before a single shot is fired. The council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The metallic sphere, Kira continued. The number carved into it. This is a message. They are counting something. Days, perhaps, or events. They want us to know that they are watching. They want us to wonder what happens when the count reaches 0. Admiral Thomas's laughed, but it sounded forced. You are giving them too much credit. They are primitives. They think in straight lines. Attack and defend. Nothing more. Kira shook her head. With respect, Admiral, you are wrong. Humans do not think in straight lines. They think in circles. They plan for generations. They hold grudges for centuries. And they never, ever forgive an insult. The meeting ended without resolution. The council thanked Kira for her report and promptly ignored it. But the spheres kept appearing. 3 months later, a Morthok mining convoy vanished in the outer territories. 40 ships, 10,000 workers, gone without a trace. When a rescue fleet arrived, they found only a single sphere floating in space. The number carved on it read 17. Fleet Master Vorn demanded answers. His intelligence officers had none. They sent spy ships toward human space, hoping to penetrate the barrier and learn what was happening inside. None of the ships returned. Their last transmissions showed nothing unusual. They simply approached the barrier and stopped responding. The Sci-Fi Collective, masters of information gathering, deployed their finest operatives. These were beings who could change their shape, read minds, and infiltrate any organization. One by one, they slipped across the border into human territory. None came back. The Solari. Hive Queen sent a formal inquiry to the other empires. Had they captured the operatives? Were they responsible for the disappearances? The answer was always the same. No one knew anything. No one had seen anything. The fear began to spread. On the Velric homeworld, civilian protests demanded answers. Why were ships disappearing? What was the government hiding? High Speaker Torvin went on public broadcasts to assure his people that everything was under control. Humanity was weak and isolated. They posed no threat. But privately, he ordered the military to triple patrols along the border with human space. He commissioned new weapons. He built new shipyards. He prepared for a war that might never come, or might come tomorrow. The economy began to suffer. Military spending consumed resources that should have gone to trade and development. Other species started avoiding Velric space, worried about being caught in a conflict. The great empire that had dominated the galaxy for millennia was slowly bleeding from a wound that had no source. Scholar. Ben of the Athari Commonwealth watched these events with fascination. The Athari were a neutral species, observers and historians who had no stake in the conflict. From their safe position on the edge of known space, they documented everything. Ben gave a lecture at the Commonwealth's greatest university. He called it the war that isn't. Consider what has happened, he told his students. Humanity declared war on 3 empires. Then they vanished. They have not attacked anyone. They have not invaded any territory. They have done nothing except leave mysterious spheres with numbers on them. He paused for effect. And yet look at the result. The Valric Dominion has tripled its military budget. The Morthok hegemony has pulled its fleets back from offensive positions to defend their homeworld. The Solari Collective has withdrawn from galactic politics entirely. Trade routes are disrupted. Economies are failing. Fear spreads faster than any plague. Ben smiled grimly. Humanity has already won this war. They won it the moment they walked out of that council chamber. Because the most powerful weapon in the universe is not a warship or a bomb. It is doubt. And doubt is the only thing humanity has given the galaxy for 6 months. The lecture was widely shared. Some called Ben a fool. Others called him a traitor. But many more read his words and felt a chill run down their spines, because deep down, they knew he was right. Commander Kira was one of those who read the lecture. She saved it to her personal files and returned to her research with new determination. If she could understand how humans thought, perhaps she could predict what they would do next. She found a young officer named Sin who shared her concerns. Together, they dug through ancient human transmissions, entertainment broadcasts, historical records. They learned about human concepts like Cold War and arms race and mutually assured destruction. Sin came to Kira's office with a pale face and trembling hands. "I found something," she said. "A human military concept called the Dead Man's Switch. It is a weapon that activates automatically if the person holding it is killed. The idea is to guarantee that even if you lose, your enemy loses too." Kira felt her blood go cold. "You think humanity has built something like that?" "I do not know," Sin admitted. "But I think the spheres are meant to make us wonder. Every time we see one, we ask ourselves, what happens when the count reaches 0? And that question is more terrifying than any answer could be." They sat in silence for a long time, watching the stars through the office window. Somewhere out there, behind a wall of light that no one could penetrate, humanity was waiting, planning, counting, and the galaxy could do nothing but watch the numbers fall. 2 years had passed since humanity disappeared behind their barrier of light. The galaxy was no longer the same place. Fleet Master Vorn stood on the command deck of his flagship, looking out at the largest armada the Morthok hegemony had ever assembled. 800 warships formed a defensive sphere around their homeworld. Another 300 patrolled the borders. Every vessel was armed to the maximum. Every crew was on constant alert, and none of them had anything to fight. Report Vorn growled at his aide. "No contacts, Fleet Master. No unusual signals. No anomalies." It was the same report Vorn had received every day for 2 years. Nothing. Always nothing. The humans never came, but they never stopped waiting for them either. The hegemony's economy was collapsing. Every factory produced weapons. Every shipyard built warships. Every credit went to the military. There was nothing left for trade, for development, for growth. Citizens were hungry. Protests were spreading. And still the fleet sat in orbit, watching empty space. Vorn slammed his fist against the console. "Where are they?" He roared at no one in particular. Why do they not attack? Nobody had an answer. On the Velric homeworld, High Speaker Torvin had not appeared in public for 3 months. The official story was that he was ill. The truth was that he had stopped sleeping. Every night he lay awake wondering if this would be the night the humans finally came. Every morning he checked the reports with trembling hands. Still nothing. Still waiting, his advisors urged him to declare victory. The humans were clearly too weak to attack. They had retreated forever. Life could return to normal, but Torvin could not bring himself to believe it. The spheres continued appearing, each one with a lower number than the last. The count had reached 47. 47 what? Days, weeks, events. Nobody knew. Nobody could figure out the pattern. Torvin had ordered his scientists to study the spheres. They were made of an alloy that did not exist in any database. They appeared from nowhere, detected by no sensors, blocked by no barriers. They simply materialized wherever the humans wanted them, like ghosts leaving messages from beyond the grave. The message was clear. We can reach you anytime we want, and there is nothing you can do about it. Commander Kira had been promoted to Admiral for her early warnings about human psychology. But the promotion felt hollow. Her warnings had been correct, but they had changed nothing. The Velric Dominion was still destroying itself from the inside. She reviewed the latest intelligence reports in her private office. Trade between empires had fallen by 70%. Several minor species had declared neutrality, and withdrawn from all alliances. The Solari Collective had sealed their borders completely. Trusting no one, speaking to no one, a knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. It was Sin, now her chief intelligence officer. "There has been another incident," Sin said quietly. "A Morthok supply depot near the rim. 300 personnel. All gone, the sphere." Sin nodded. "Number 43. Kira closed her eyes. The countdown continued. For more events since she last checked. For more disappearances. And still, no bodies, no wreckage, no evidence of what had happened. "Have we learned anything new about the humans?" she asked. "Nothing," Sin admitted. "Our probes still cannot penetrate the barrier around their space. Our spies still vanish the moment they cross the border. We have no idea what they are building, what they are planning, what they intend to do, which is exactly what they want," Kira said bitterly. "The unknown enemy is always more frightening than the known one. They could have 1,000 ships or 1,000,000. They could be preparing to attack tomorrow or in 100 years. We have no way to know. So we must prepare for everything. And in preparing for everything, we exhaust ourselves." Sin sat down heavily in a chair. "What do we do?" "I do not know," Kira admitted. "This is not a war we can win with ships and weapons. It is a war of minds. And right now, they are winning." Scholar Ben of the Etheri Commonwealth continued his research from a safe distance. His famous lecture had made him both celebrated and hated throughout the galaxy. Some praised his insight. Others accused him of being a human sympathizer. He did not care about either group. He only cared about understanding what was happening. In his latest paper, he wrote about the concept of economic warfare. Humans had used this strategy many times in their history. Instead of fighting directly, they would pressure their enemies through trade restrictions, resource denial, and financial manipulation. The goal was to make war so expensive that the enemy would collapse before the first battle. "The three empires are doing humanity's work for them," Ben wrote. "Every credit spent on weapons is a credit not spent on food, medicine, infrastructure. Every soldier sitting in a defensive position is a worker not producing goods. Humanity does not need to attack. They only need to wait while their enemies bleed themselves dry." The paper was banned in Velric's space, but copies spread anyway. People read it in secret and felt the truth of it in their bones. Meanwhile, strange rumors began to circulate. A merchant captain claimed to have seen a human ship beyond the galactic rim, in space that was supposed to be empty. A scientist reported detecting unusual energy signatures from a region outside mapped territory. An ancient probe launched thousands of years ago by a forgotten species suddenly reactivated and transmitted a single image before going silent again. The image showed a human face. These rumors were impossible to verify, but they added to the growing sense that humanity was not simply hiding. They were doing something out there in the dark. Something big. Something that would change everything. High Speaker Torvin finally appeared before the Velric Council to address these concerns. He looked old and tired, his blue skin pale and his four eyes dim. "We must consider our options," he said slowly. "The current situation cannot continue. Our economy is failing. Our people are afraid. We cannot keep waiting forever. Then what do you propose?" Admiral Thomas's demanded. Torvin hesitated. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he spoke words that no Velric leader had spoken in 10,000 years. "Perhaps we should negotiate." The chamber erupted in outrage. Negotiate? With the primitives who had insulted the council? With the cowards who had run away rather than face judgment? It was unthinkable. It was shameful, but Torvin raised his hand for silence. "What is more shameful?" he asked quietly. "Talking to humans? Or destroying our civilization because we were too proud to talk?" No one had an answer. In the end, the council voted to send a diplomatic message to human space. It took weeks to agree on the wording. They did not want to appear weak, but they did not want to provoke an attack either. Finally, they composed a carefully neutral inquiry, asking if humanity would be willing to discuss the current situation. The message was transmitted toward the barrier around Sol. They waited for Response? None came. Weeks passed, months. The spheres continued appearing. The count reached 23. The empires continued bleeding, and humanity remained silent, hidden behind their wall of light. Waiting for something that only they understood, Admiral Kira watched the stars each night. Wondering what the humans were planning, she had studied them for 2 years now. She knew their history, their psychology, their patterns of behavior, and she had reached a conclusion that terrified her more than any weapon. The humans were not preparing for war. The war had already begun, and the galaxy had already lost 5 years after humanity vanished. The countdown spheres reached 3. The galaxy held its breath. On the Velric homeworld, emergency shelters were prepared for the civilian population. On the Morthok homeworld, Fleetmaster Vorn ordered his armada to maximum alert. The Solari Collective activated defense systems that had not been used in 1,000 years. Everyone expected the attack to come any moment, but nothing happened. 3 days later, a sphere appeared with the number 2. 1 week after that, another sphere showed 1. Admiral Kira had not slept in days. She sat in her command center, surrounded by screens showing tactical data from across Velric space. Every sensor was active. Every ship was ready. Every weapon was armed. Any contact? She asked for the 100th time. Nothing, Admiral. Space is empty. Empty. 5 years of waiting. And space was still empty. Then the screens flickered. Every display in the command center went dark for a moment. When they came back online, they showed only one thing: a human face. Kira recognized the symbols on the man's uniform. This was a scientist, not a soldier. He was middle-aged with kind eyes and gray hair. He did not look threatening. He looked tired, like someone who had worked very hard for a very long time. "My name is Dr. Lee Junho," the man said calmly. "I am broadcasting this message to every world in the galaxy simultaneously. I speak on behalf of the United Earth Federation." Kira's heart pounded in her chest. After 5 years of silence, humanity was finally talking. What did they want? What were they planning? Dr. Lee Junho continued. 5 years ago, the Galactic Council voted to cage our species, to limit our growth, to control our future. High Speaker Torvin called us children who needed guidance. Fleetmaster Vorn called us animals who needed to be contained. The scientist's expression remained calm, but his voice grew harder. So we left. We took our people, our ships, our technology, and we went to places you were afraid to go. Beyond the galactic rim. Into the dark spaces between stars. Into regions of space that your ancient records marked as forbidden. The image on the screen changed. Instead of Dr. Lee Junho's face, it showed a fleet of ships. Thousands of them. Tens of thousands. Ships of designs that no species in the galaxy had ever seen. Ships that seemed to bend light around them, that flickered in and out of normal space like ghosts. We found things there. Dr. Lee Junho's voice continued over the images. Old things. Powerful things. Civilizations that rose and fell before your ancestors learned to use fire. Technology that makes your greatest achievements look like children's toys. And we learned from all of it. The image changed again. This time it showed soldiers in powered armor that seemed to phase through solid walls. Weapons that dissolved matter at the molecular level. Stations the size of moons, bristling with energy projectors that could crack planets. We could destroy you. Dr. Lee Junho said simply. Every empire that signed the containment doctrine could be ash within a week. We have the power now. More power than you can imagine. More power than you could stop even if you combined every fleet in the galaxy. Kira felt cold. This was it. This was the end. After 5 years of waiting, humanity had come back with weapons beyond comprehension, and they would finally take their revenge. But then Dr. Lee Junho smiled. It was a strange smile, sad and proud at the same time. That was never the point. The image returned to his face. It did not leave to become stronger than you. We did not build these weapons to take revenge. We built them so that you would know with absolute certainty that if we wanted to destroy you, we could. He paused to let the words sink in. We left to prove something. Not to you. To ourselves. We needed to know that we did not need your approval. We did not need your acceptance. We did not need your permission to exist, to grow, to become whatever we chose to become. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched in stunned silence. This was not what anyone had expected. For 5 years, you have lived in fear of us. Your economies have collapsed. Your empires have weakened. Your people have lost hope. And we did not fire a single shot. We did not need to. Fear was enough. Doubt was enough. The monster you imagined was more terrifying than anything we could have actually done. Dr. Lee Junho's expression softened. Let me be clear about what happens next. The declaration of war stands. Legally, officially, we are still at war with the Velric Dominion. It's the Morthok hegemony, the Siluri Collective, and all who supported the containment doctrine. That will not change. He held up his hand before anyone could react. But we choose not to fight it. We choose not to use the weapons we have built. We choose not to take revenge for the insult you gave us 5 years ago. At that moment, on every capital world, in every government building, in every military installation, a final sphere appeared. The number on it read 0, but no explosion followed, no attack, no destruction. Consider this moment, Dr. Lee Junho said. Right now, we could end your civilizations. We have that power, and we are choosing not to use it. Not because we are weak, not because we are afraid, because we are better than that. Because true strength is not about what you can destroy. It is about what you choose not to. The screens flickered again, and new images appeared. Human ships, not warships, but exploration vessels. Scientists, builders, pioneers. We are not your enemies, Dr. Lee Junho said. We never were. We are simply a species that refuses to be controlled, refuses to be limited, refuses to accept a cage no matter how pretty the bars. His final words were spoken slowly, with great weight. The barrier around our space will remain for now. We have much work to do. But someday, perhaps, we will return to galactic society. On that day, we will not come as children, seeking approval. We will come as equals, or not at all. The transmission ended. For a long moment, no one in Kira's command center moved or spoke. They simply stared at the screens, trying to understand what they had just witnessed. Humanity had won. They had won completely, absolutely, without firing a single shot. And then, at the moment of their greatest triumph, they had chosen mercy. Kira thought about everything she had learned about humans over the past 5 years. Their history of violence, their capacity for destruction, their terrible, beautiful determination. She had expected them to come back as conquerors. Instead, they had come back as something else entirely. Something the galaxy had never seen before. A species that had the power to destroy everything and chose to build instead. Slowly, Kira began to laugh. It was not a happy laugh. It was the laugh of someone who had spent 5 years preparing for the wrong war entirely. On the Morthok homeworld, Fleetmaster Vorn stared at his screens with his mouth hanging open. 800 warships suddenly seemed very small and very useless. On the Velric homeworld, High Speaker Torvin sat alone in his bunker, watching the transmission replay over and over. He had expected many things from humanity, anger, revenge, destruction. He had not expected. He had not expected to feel ashamed, and across the galaxy. Billions of beings looked up at the stars and wondered what kind of species could have everything and want nothing except to be left alone. The answer, they were beginning to understand, was humanity. 50 years had passed since the day humanity showed the galaxy their power and chose not to use it. The universe was a very different place now. Elder Park Yuna walked slowly through the gardens of the Human War Memorial in Geneva. She was 142 years old, kept alive by the life extension treatments that humanity had discovered during their exile. Her hair was white as snow, her face lined with age, but her eyes were still sharp. They were still the eyes of the woman who had walked into the Galactic Council chamber half a century ago and changed everything. A group of young students followed her, recording devices in hand. They were studying history, and she was living history. Ambassador Park, one of them asked, "Why did humanity choose mercy? After everything the empires did to us, why did we not take revenge?" She stopped walking and looked up at the memorial. It was a simple structure, just a tall pillar of black stone with names carved into its surface. Not names of soldiers who died in battle. There had been no battles. Instead, it listed the names of those who had worked during the 5-year silence. Scientists, engineers, diplomats, ordinary people who had given everything to build a future without war. "Do you know what our greatest weapon was?" she asked the students. They shook their heads. It was not the ships we built or the technology we discovered. It was patience. We understood something that the empires did not. Revenge is easy. Anyone can destroy. But building something that lasts, something that matters, that is hard. That is strength. She resumed walking, her old bones aching, but her spirit still strong. Could have burned their worlds to ash. We could have made them suffer as they tried to make us suffer. And then what? We would have become exactly what they said we were. Violent, dangerous, unworthy of the stars. She shook her head. No. We wanted to prove them wrong. And the only way to do that was to be better than they expected us to be. The gardens were full of visitors today. Humans and aliens walked side by side, some talking, some simply enjoying the beauty of the place. 50 years ago, such a scene would have been impossible. Now it was normal far across the galaxy. General Kang Min-ho stood on the bridge of his command ship, watching a new world take shape on his view screens. The planet was called Haven. It was home to the newest members of the Human Alliance. They were called the Irath, species that the old empires had dismissed as primitives. Too small, too weak, not worth contacting. But humanity had found them during the exile years, and instead of conquering them or ignoring them, they had offered friendship. Now the Irath were thriving. Human technology had helped them build cities and spacecraft. Human teachers had shared knowledge freely, without conditions or restrictions. And the Irath, in turn, had shared their own wisdom. Their understanding of certain types of energy fields had helped humanity develop new forms of power generation. It was how things worked now. Partnership instead of dominance. Exchange instead of exploitation. General Kang Min-ho was the son of Admiral Kang Do-yan, who had led the original withdrawal 50 years ago. His father had died peacefully 10 years past, surrounded by family and friends. Proud of the future humanity had built, General, his aide reported. "We have received a transmission from the Andromeda expedition. Captain Osiwu reports that they have successfully established their first way station. They will reach the target galaxy within 3 generations." Kang Min-ho smiled. Andromeda, a whole new galaxy, waiting to be explored. Humanity was not satisfied with one galaxy anymore. They wanted to see everything, learn everything, become everything they could possibly be, and no one was trying to stop them on what remained of the Velric homeworld. The situation was very different. The great empire had shattered into dozens of smaller states, each one struggling to survive. High Speaker Torvin had died in disgrace 20 years after the return. Remembered as the fool who awakened a sleeping giant, Admiral Kira, now very old herself, had spent her final decades trying to rebuild her people. She had never forgotten the lessons she learned from studying humanity. She had tried to teach those lessons to the next generation of Velric leaders. Sometimes they listened. Sometimes they did not, but change was slow and painful. Kira knew she would not live to see the final result. She sat in her garden one evening, watching the stars appear one by one. A young Velric officer named Tan sat beside her, eager to learn from the legendary strategist. He asked. Kira smiled. It was the same question everyone had asked for 50 years. And the answer was always the same. More, she said. Always more. That is their nature. They see a limit and they push past it. They see a boundary and they cross it. They were never meant to be contained. The galaxy learned that the hard way. Do you think they will ever forgive us? Kira considered the question carefully. I think they already have. That is what makes them so strange and so wonderful. They do not hold grudges the way we do. They move forward. Always forward. The Sillery Collective, once sealed behind walls of fear, had eventually reached out to humanity. It took 15 years of careful negotiation, but eventually a cultural exchange program was established. Ambassador Shinhana, granddaughter of a diplomat who had served under Park Yuna, led the human delegation. She discovered that the Sillery were not so different from humans after all. They had fears and hopes and dreams, just like anyone else. They had simply been taught to hide those things behind a mask of cold logic. Slowly, carefully, the mask began to crack. Now Sillery and human researchers worked together on projects that neither species could have accomplished alone. The combination of human creativity and Sillery precision produced breakthroughs that amazed the entire galaxy. Thaka Gemini had been the first to surrender after the return. Within a year of Dr. Lee Junho's broadcast, Fleetmaster Vorn had traveled to Earth himself to sign a peace treaty. He had expected harsh terms, reparations, territorial concessions, humiliation. Instead, humanity had offered a simple handshake. No conditions, the human president had said. No punishments. Just peace. We have better things to do than hold grudges. Vorn had not understood at first. In Morthok culture, mercy was weakness. You crushed your enemies, or you were crushed by them. There was no middle ground, but over time he came to understand. Mercy was not weakness. It was confidence. Humanity was so certain of their strength that they did not need to prove it through destruction. They could afford to be kind. It was, Vorn admitted in his later years, the most terrifying thing he had ever seen. Back on Earth, Elder Park Yuna finished her tour of the memorial. The students thanked her and departed. Their heads full of new thoughts about history and power and the nature of strength, she remained in the garden alone. Watching the sun set over the mountains, a young man approached her. He wore the uniform of the Frontier Exploration Corps. His name tag read Captain Osiwu. Ambassador Park, he said, saluting. I wanted to meet you before I left. Tomorrow we depart for the Andromeda way station. I may not return in your lifetime. She looked at him with those sharp old eyes. Then why come to see me? Because you've started all of this, he said. 50 years ago, you walked out of that council chamber and changed everything. I wanted you to know that your sacrifice meant something. We are going to see another galaxy because of what you did. Park Yuna reached out and took his hand. Her grip was weak, but her spirit was not. I did not start this, she said gently. Humanity started this. I was just the voice. The strength came from all of us. Every person who worked during the silence, every scientist who discovered new wonders, every child who grew up believing that we could be more than what the galaxy expected us to be. She squeezed his hand. Go to Andromeda. See things no human has ever seen. And when you find other species there, remember what we learned here. Power is not about destruction. It is about creation. It is about building something that will last longer than you ever could. Captain Osiwu saluted one final time and walked away. Tomorrow, he would board his ship and leave the galaxy behind. Not in retreat as humanity had left 50 years ago, but in ambition, in hope, in the endless human desire to see what lies beyond the horizon. Elder Park Yuna watched him go. And for the first time in many years, she felt tears on her cheeks. They were not tears of sadness. They were tears of pride. Humanity had proven that they were not the violent primitives the galaxy had feared. They were not the dangerous children who needed to be controlled. They were something new, something the universe had never seen before. They were explorers who chose discovery over conquest. They were warriors who chose mercy over revenge. They were humans, and they had only just begun.